listened to Holman speak, Jack admitted to himself that he probably could not have liked any man on that side of the desk, under the circumstances. Ullman had asked a question he hadn't caught. That was bad. Ullman was the type of man who would file such lapses away in a mental Rolodex for later consideration. I'm sorry. I asked if your wife fully understood what you would be taking on here. And there's your son, of course. He glanced down at the application in front of him. Daniel, your wife isn't a bit intimidated by the idea. Wendy is an extraordinary woman. And your son is also extraordinary. Jack smiled a big, wide PR smile. We like to think so, I suppose. He's quite self-reliant for a 5-year-old. No returning smile from Ullman. He slipped Jack's application back into a file. The file went into a drawer. The desktop was now completely bare except for a blotter, a telephone, a tensor lamp, and an in-and-out basket. Both sides of the in-and-out were empty too. Ullman stood up and went to the file cabinet in the corner. Step around the desk, if you will, Mr. Torrance. We'll look at the hotel floor plans. He brought back 5 large sheets and set them down on the glossy walnut pine of the desk. Jack stood by his shoulder, very much aware of the scent of Ullman's cologne. All my men wear English leather, or they wear nothing at all. Came into his mind for no reason at all, and he had to clamp his tongue between his teeth to keep an array of laughter. Beyond the wall, faintly, came the sounds of the Overlook Hotel's kitchen, gearing down from lunch. Top floor, Ullman said briskly. The attic. Absolutely nothing up there now but bric-a-brac. The Overlook has changed hands several times since World War II. And it seems that each successive manager has put everything they don't want up in the attic. I want rat traps and poison bait soda around it. Some of the third-floor chambermaids say they have heard rustling noises. I don't believe it. Not for a moment. But there mustn't even be that 1 in 100 chance that a single rat inhabits the Overlook Hotel. Jack, who suspected that every hotel in the world had a rat or two, held his tongue. Of course you wouldn't allow your son up in the attic under any circumstances. No, Jack said, and flashed the big PR smile again. Humiliating situation. Did this officious little prick actually think he would allow his son to goof around in a rat trap attic full of junk, furniture, and God knew what else? Ullman whisked away the attic floor plan and put it on the bottom of the pile. The Overlook has 110 guest quarters, he said in a scholarly voice. 30 of them, all suites, are here on the 3rd floor, 10 in the west wing, including the presidential suite, 10 in the center, 10 more in the east wing. All of them command magnificent views. Could you at least spare the sales talk? But he kept quiet. He needed the job. Ullman put the 3rd floor on the bottom of the pile, and they studied the 2nd floor. 40 rooms, Ullman said, 30 doubles and 10 singles, and on the 1st floor, 20 of each. Plus 3 linen closets on each floor, and a storeroom, which is at the extreme east end of the hotel, on the 2nd floor, and the extreme west end on the 1st. Questions? Jack shook his head. Ullman whisked the 2nd and 1st floors away. Now, lobby level. Here's the center. Here in the center is the registration desk. Behind it are the offices. The lobby runs 480 feet in either direction from the desk. Over here in the west wing is the Overlook dining room and the Colorado lounge. The banquet and ballroom facility is in the east wing. Questions? Only about the basement, Jack said. For the winter caretaker, that's the most important level of all, where the action is, so to speak. Watson will show you all of that. The basement floor plan is on the boiler room wall. He frowned impressively, perhaps to show that, as a manager, he did not concern himself with such mundane aspects of the Overlook's operation as the boiler and the plumbing. Might not be a bad idea to put some traps down there, too. Just a minute. He scrawled the note on a pad he took from the inner coat pocket. Each sheet bore the legend from the desk of Stuart Ullman in black, bold script, tore it off, and dropped it in the basket. It sat there looking lonesome. The pad suspicious in this caretaking matter quite obvious. He wants you hired. I will do so, but if I had been given a free hand in this matter, I would not have taken you on. Jack's hands were clenched tightly in his lap, working against each other, sweating. A vicious little prick, a vicious little prick, a vicious. I don't believe you care much for me, Mr. Torrance. I don't care. Certainly your feelings towards me play no part in my own belief that you are not a right fit for the job. During the season that runs from May 15th to September 13th, the Overlook employs 110 people full-time, one for every room in the hotel, you might say. I don't think any of them like me, and I suspect that some of them think I'm a bit of a bastard. They would be correct in their judgment of my character. I have to be a bit of a bastard to run this hotel in the manner it deserves. He looked at Jack for comment, and Jack flashed the PR smile again, large and insultingly toothy. Ullman said, "The Overlook was built in the years 1907 to 1909. The closest town is Sidewinder, 40 miles east of here, over roads that are closed from sometime in late October or November until sometime in April. A man named Robert Townley Watson built it, the grandfather of the present maintenance man. Vanderbilts have stayed here, the Rockefellers, the Astors, the DuPonts. 4 presidents have stayed at the presidential suite: Wilson, Harding, Roosevelt, and Nixon. I wouldn't be too proud of Harding and Nixon," Jack murmured. Ullman frowned, but went on regardless. It proved too much for Mr. Watson, and he sold the hotel in 1915. It was sold again in 1922, in 1929, in 1936. It stood vacant until the end of World War II, when it was purchased and completely renovated by Horace Derwent, millionaire, inventor, pilot, film producer, and entrepreneur. "I know the name," Jack said. Yes, everything he touched seemed to turn to gold, except the Overlook. He funneled over $1 million into it before the first post-war guest ever stepped through its doors, turning a decrepit relic into a showplace. It was Derwent who added the Roque court. I saw you admiring when you arrived. Roque, a British forebear of the croquet. Mr. Torrance, croquet is a bastardized roque. According to legend, Derwent learned the game from his social secretary and fell completely in love with it. Ours may be the finest roque court in America. I wouldn't doubt it, Jack said gravely. A roque court, a topiary full of hedge animals out front. What next? A life-size Uncle Wiggily came behind the equipment shed. He was getting very tired of Mr. Stuart Ullman. But he could see that Mr. Ullman wasn't done. Ullman was going to have his say, every last word of it. When he had lost $3 million, Derwent sold it to a group of California investors. Their experience with the Overlook was equally bad, just not hotel people. In 1970, Mr. Shockley and a group of his associates bought the hotel and turned its management over to me. We have also run in the red for several years, but I'm happy to say that the trust of the present owners in me has never wavered. Last year, we broke even, and this year the Overlook's accounts were written in black ink for the first time in almost 7 decades. Jack supposed that this fussy little man's pride was justified, and then his original dislike washed over him again in a wave. He said, "I see no connection between the Overlook's admittedly colorful history and your feeling I'm wrong for the post, Mr. Holzman. One reason that the Overlook has lost so much money lies in the depreciation that occurs each winter. It shortens the profit margin a great deal, more than you might believe, Mr. Torrance. The winters are fantastically cruel. In order to cope with the problem, I've installed a full-time winter caretaker to run the boiler, to heat different parts of the hotel on a daily rotating basis, to repair breakage as it occurs, and to do repairs so the elements can't get a foothold, to be constantly alert to any and every contingency. During our first winter, I hired a family instead of a single man. There was a tragedy, a horrible tragedy." Ullman looked at Jack coolly and appraisingly. "I made a mistake. I admitted freely the man was a drunk." Jack felt a slow, hot grin, the total antithesis of the toothy PR grin, stretch across his mouth. "Is that it? I'm surprised Al didn't tell you. I've retired." "Yes, Mr. Shockley told me you no longer drink. more specific than that, but I do happen to believe that the Grady's case has a bearing, and that is why I have brought the matter of your previous history into the conversation. During the winter of 1970 to 71, after we had refurbished the Overlook, but before our first season, I hired this unfortunate name, Delbert Grady. He moved into the quarters you and your wife and son will be sharing. He had a wife and 2 daughters. I had reservations, the main ones being the harshness of the winter season and the fact that the Gradys would be cut off from the outside world for 4 to 5 or 6 months. But that's not really true, is it? There are telephones here and probably a citizens band radio as well, and the Rocky Mountain National Park is within helicopter range, and surely a piece of ground that big must have a chopper or 2. I wouldn't know about that, Ullman said. The hotel does have a 2-way radio that Mr. Watson will show you, along with a list of the correct frequencies to broadcast on if you need help. The telephone lines between here and Sidewinder are still above ground, and they do go down almost every winter, and at some point or another, they are apt to stay down for 3 weeks to a month and a half. There is a snowmobile in the equipment shed also. Then the place really isn't cut off. Mr. Ullman looked pained. Suppose your son or your wife tripped on the stairs and fractured his or her skull, Mr. Torrance. Would you think the place was cut off then? Jack saw the point. A snowmobile running at top speed could get you down to Sidewinder in an hour and a half, maybe. A helicopter from the park's rescue service could get up here in 3 hours. Under optimum conditions. In a blizzard, it would never even be able to lift off, and you couldn't hope to run a snowmobile at top speed, even if you dared take a seriously injured person out into temperatures that might be 25 below or 45 below, if you added in the wind chill factor. In the case of Grady, Ullman said, I reasoned much as Mr. Shockley seems to have done in your case. Solitude can be damaging in and of itself. Better for the man to have his family with him. If there was trouble, I thought, the odds were very high that it would be something less urgent than a fractured skull, or an accident with one of the power tools or some sort of convulsion. A serious case of the flu, pneumonia, broken arm, even appendicitis, any of those things would have left enough time. I suspect that what happened came as a result of too much cheap whiskey, of which Grady had laid a generous supply unbeknownst to me, and a curious condition which the old-timers call cabin fever. Do you know the term? Ullman offered a patronizing little smile, ready to explain as soon as Jack admitted his ignorance, and Jack was happy to respond quickly and crisply. It's a slang term for the claustrophobic reaction that can occur when people are shut in together over long periods of time. The feeling of claustrophobia is externalized as dislike for the people you happen to be shut in with. In extreme cases, it can result in hallucinations and violence. Murder has been done over such minor things as a burned meal or an argument about whose turn it is to do the dishes. Ullman looked rather nonplussed, which did Jack a world of good. He decided to press a little further, but silently promised Wendy he would stay cool. I suspect you did make a mistake at that. Did he hurt them? He killed them, Mr. Torrance, and then committed suicide. He murdered the little girls with a hatchet, his wife with a shotgun, and himself the same way. His leg was broken, undoubtedly so drunk, he fell downstairs. Ullman spread his hands and looked at Jack self-righteously. Was he a high school graduate? As a matter of fact, he wasn't, Ullman said, a little stiffly. I thought a, shall we say, less imaginative individual could be less susceptible to the breakers, the loneliness. That was your mistake, Jack said. A stupid man is more prone to cabin fever, just as he's more prone to shoot someone over a card game or commit a spur-of-the-moment robbery. He gets bored. When the snow comes, there's nothing to do but watch TV or play solitaire and cheat when he can't get all the aces out. Nothing to do but bitch at his wife and nag at the kids and drink. It gets hard to sleep because there's nothing to hear, so he drinks himself to sleep and wakes up with a hangover. He gets edgy, and maybe the telephone goes out and the TV aerial blows down, and there's nothing to do but think and cheat at solitaire and get edgier and edgier. Finally, boom, boom, boom. Whereas a more educated man, such as yourself, my wife and I both like to read. Yes, I think we can keep busy and out of each other's hair if the TV goes on the fritz. He paused. And Al was telling the truth when he told you I no longer drink. I did once, and it got to be serious, but I haven't had so much as a glass of beer in the last 14 months. I don't intend to bring any alcoholic beer, and I don't think there will be any opportunity to get any after the snow flies. In that you would be quite correct, Ullman said. But as long as the three of you are up here, the potential for problems is multiplied. I have told Mr. Shockley this, and he told me he would take the responsibility. Now I've told you, and apparently you are also willing to take the responsibility. I am. Alright, I'll accept that since I have a little choice, but I would still rather have an unattached college boy taking a year off. Well, perhaps you'll do. Now I'll turn you over to Mr. Watson, who will take you through the basement and around the grounds unless you have further questions. Nope, none at all. Ullman stood. I hope there are no hard feelings, Mr. Torrance. There is nothing personal in the things I have said to you. I only want what's best for the Overlook. It is a great hotel. I want it to stay that way. No hard feelings, Jack flashed the PR grin again, but he was glad Ullman didn't offer to shake hands. There were hard feelings.